So, good morning. Bonjour. I can't see you. Okay. That's interesting. I feel like I'm talking to myself. So, it's fitting that I'm here today to encourage you all to be vulnerable enough to risk failure and even celebrate failure. Because as I stand before you right now, my heart is racing and I'm shaking at fear of failing today. But the fact of the matter is being outside of our comfort zone, being vulnerable is where the magic happens. So we have to find the courage to go there. As you heard in the introduction, I am a change agent, first and foremost. And I have come to believe that the powerful inhibitors to change are our false truths. And each and every one of us have scores of false truths that can sabotage our potential. So we have to go out on a hunt to find these false truths, because our false truths are pervasive in both our personal and our professional lives. And we need to replace these false truths with relevant habits that can maximize our potential for success. So today we're going to explore what I consider to be the most prevalent false truth, which is that failures are bad. And we're going to learn about a new habit that you can adopt to be able to correct those false truths about failure. Have you ever noticed that when you ask somebody about their success story, typically they tell you about all of the failures that led to their success? Don't get me wrong, failures do suck in the moment. But they're not bad. Failures are the chapters of our success stories. When I was in grade school, I excelled in math and science, but I failed miserably in English and history, no matter how hard I tried. I can still remember how intensely shamed I felt every time I was called upon to speak out loud in English class. Yet, despite this difficulty I was having, I scored in the top 1 percentile for IQ testing. And my teachers could not have been more disinterested in this contradiction. But my mother was convinced there was more to it. And despite them encouraging her to simply expect less from me, she was determined to prove them wrong. And thanks to her determination, we eventually discovered that I am dyslexic. And we knew very little about dyslexia back then. So I was pulled from my English and history class and I was put into a special class for anybody that had any kind of disability, which I prefer to call a distinct ability. And this really motivated my mother to get me the help I needed to be successful. So she went outside of the school system and she found a specialist that worked with me. And this specialist worked closely with me and showed me how to train my own mind to process information in a way that wasn't instinctive for me. And before long, I was invited back into English and history classes, and gradually my grades improved, and I'm happy to say that I finished school with not only a 4.0 grade average, but English was one of my favorite subjects. And as proud as I was of that accomplishment, that was overshadowed by the shame I felt around the failures that I had faced as a result of my dyslexia, and just for even having that term, I guess, as an identity for myself. But then you fast forward 20 years later, and as I stand here right now, I could not have a more different perspective. Because now I credit the failures I faced due to my dyslexia and my dyslexia itself for my success as a change agent. Because being able to teach myself new ways of thinking is instinctive for me, to think in multiple ways. That's my biggest asset. So now I can reflect back on those experiences I went through, and they were merely some of the chapters in my own success story. So how do you respond to failure? Most of us fear it, and celebrating it definitely feels counterintuitive. And I don't think saying that there's value in failure is anything new. In fact, that topic has had a lot of airtime in the last couple of years. But what we fail to do is recognize that it's our biases and it's our deep-rooted discrimination towards failure that shapes our irrational response to it. And that's what keeps us stuck and not changing our ways to adopt and recognize that there is value in failure. Our biases start from the day we are born. If you think about it, our parents start to teach us right out of the gate that you want to avoid failure at all cost. Most parents think that it's their job to protect their children from failure, with a misguided conviction that this is going to maximize their potential for success. Yet those that we perceive to be the masters of success in the world, the Michael Jordans, the Richard Bransons, they all credit their success to their abundant failures. Hailed for being the world's best basketball player, Michael Jordan says, "I failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." And Richard Branson, a fellow dyslexic, I might add, he was one of our most celebrated entrepreneurs, but he has failed countless ventures. But he never fails to maximize the opportunity to really consume the lessons learned from his mistakes. And that's what's fostered his continued success. So not only did their failures shape their success, but if they didn't have them, they would not have been properly equipped to manage and sustain their success. But that said, not all failures are equal. I want to make clear that there's different types of failures, and ideally failures become like cues, an opportunity for us to reshape our approach and learn. Those are the kinds of failures that Michael Jordan and Richard Branson are referring to, and those are the kinds of failures we need to learn to embrace and celebrate. But what we want to avoid doing is what I call failure normalization. And all I mean by that is when we ignore the cues, when failure becomes the norm, the status quo. How often do we see companies that perceive missing their financial targets as failure, yet those same companies spend millions of dollars on customer support, in other words, issues, and think of that as simply a cost of doing business? They are investing in making failure scalable. If your company's spending millions of dollars to support customer issues, it's an indicator that your customer experience is failing, and you need to acknowledge that and learn from that and then change the experience. So I guess the third kind is when you just don't do anything at all. It's basically lacking the courage, because you can't assume that every failure is going to end up in a success, but you cannot succeed unless you're willing to fail. So if we think of failure as a bridge towards success, we only want to pay the toll once every time we cross that bridge. And we need to do this, we really need to do more than just acknowledge what type of failure it is. We need to be able to reprogram our finely honed intolerance towards failure broadly and replace it with a new habit where you're going to acknowledge, learn, and change, and then you're going to celebrate it. That is our new habit. If you want to learn more about the power of habit, I highly recommend Charles Duhigg's new book, his habit loop. It's brilliantly simple, yet so powerful. And as a change agent, I see all the time with companies where they are really misusing their failures. They acknowledge it often. They often even learn from it, but then they stop there. They don't make the changes to reflect what they have learned, which then triggers the whole Groundhog Day effect, where we essentially feel like Bill Murray did in the movie, where we're reliving the same failure over and over and over again. And that is why the habit loop is so important, to be able to reprogram our ways, how we handle it today. So what I want to do is I want all of you to ask yourselves and reflect on the failures you've had. And think about what types they were. Ask yourself, what did I learn? And what did I change as a result? And have a belated celebration for all of your failure cues. And definitely create some change if you find any failure normalization in your world. And hopefully, by correcting your false beliefs about failure, doing nothing will no longer be an option. So I want to recap. Basically, we now know that failures are not bad. Failures are merely chapters in our success stories. And we now have a new habit loop that we will apply when we do face failure, where we acknowledge it, we learn from it, and we change our ways from it, and then we celebrate. And I want you to apply this new truth and this new habit to everything you do in your life. As a parent, break the cycle. Be brave enough to encourage your children to risk failure when they dream big or think big. And as a boss, don't shun failure. Quite frankly, if your team isn't ever failing, they're probably not trying hard enough. And you really do need to encourage them to risk failure when they come up with new ideas. And I don't want you to stop with this false truth. I'm hoping this triggers a false truth hunt in your life. Find the beliefs that are marginalizing your success. And to do this, you need to take a more symbolic view on your life and ideally find a truth coach. And all I mean by that is somebody that you trust, that has the courage to give you the kind truth about yourself and your ways. Because it's so much easier for us to recognize truth outside of ourselves, and our own blind spots are much harder to detect. And while you're on this false truth hunt, I want you to never stop asking why. I have to assume if you're here today, like me, you are on a hunt for success. And I want you to be a hunter on a deeper level. Don't just reap benefits without understanding their origin, or chase outcomes without understanding why you want them. Go on a hunt to understand why you want what you want, why you think what you think, and why you feel what you feel. So my ultimate message here today is to stop enabling your false truths. Go on a hunt and replace them with relevant habits designed to maximize your potential and your purpose. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.